You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Reaching all the way back to 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition. Here is your host of Fate Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I am so pleased to be here with you. Thank you for joining us. I know you could be doing all kinds of things this evening, and you chose to listen to us, so thanks. I am very excited about tonight's guest. I am developing skills and interest with cryptid research, and I am trying to learn how to actually do the investigations well. I'm fortunate enough to have a book written by a friend called Admissible, which gives you information on how to get evidence on any number of things, cryptids, ufology, paranormal, things that people don't normally assume that you need that level of evidence for. But the author, Chase Klotsky, has been in ufology investigation for quite some time and decided that if there were going to be so many questions, then you needed to have rock solid evidence, and you needed to have an excellent chain of ownership of that evidence. And so that's how I started trying to do my investigations in the paranormal, and that's how I plan to do my investigations when I get there into cryptozoology. And tonight's guest is someone who, well, she is just brilliant. She has been awarded Dedicated Researcher of the Year. She has all kinds of pieces of information out there. She works with the Olypic Project. She has things in her home state of Texas that she investigates, and in fact has a conference coming up there. I mean, this is just going to be a fantastic evening, and Shelly Covington-Montana is my guest, and I hope that y'all enjoy her as much as I know I'm going to. Shelly, hi there. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Hey, Kat. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our visit tonight, and I'm excited that you want to go about investigating cryptozoology in the proper sense as far as true evidence in the scientific world. And that's very unique at this time, because most people don't lead their evidence through scientific facts. They lead it through opinion and what they think is evidence. So this is exciting for me. So yes, thank you.
Well, you came very highly recommended to me by somebody I admire a lot, and that would be Nick Redfern. He said that if I wanted to talk to someone about Bigfoot and basically wilderness investigation, that you were it. So,
well, Nick is
that's a pretty high.
guy.
Yeah, that's a pretty
awesome.
good recommendation. So
yeah, I would think so, and I'm so humbled by Nick and how he always promotes me, and I appreciate it so much. And he understands I work really hard, because I go to Nick for all my questions about how I need to go about, when it's conferences or book deals or shows, he's always that guy. I'm going to head, in his direction and ask his advice. And he understands that proof is very important to me, and I'm not here because I want to go and scare myself in the woods or have that unique experience. He understands that this is a journey that I've been on for quite a few years through my husband's experience, and I feel it's important, and that the great North American Sasquatch deserves us to look upon it as a true entity that really is something that is important to this world. And I only want to be there to present the facts, not my opinion, not my emotional state involved with the research. It really has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the species itself.
Well, I am curious because I understand that your husband had an experience and that's what brought you into this. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am. So just a little background about myself and my marriage and me in general is I am a daughter of a law enforcement officer here in Texas. My father is a retired narcotics lieutenant for the state of Texas with Texas Ranger honors. So I was raised to always be truthful and always bring forth facts, no matter what it was. That was my life. I grew up in a family where my dad's job was never public. We always had to keep it secret because he was an undercover agent for the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. So anything I did had, especially in something like Bigfoot or something that is considered, just kind of crazy, basically, in the South, that I better bring facts if I'm going to bring anything to the table. So that aside, my husband and I have known each other 43 years. I met him when I was 13 years old. He was my neighbor, and later, he's older than I am. So later in life, about 10 years down the road, I ended up marrying my husband, and I've been married to him now for 33 years. Throughout the time we were friends and married from the early 80s, he had kept telling me this story that had happened to him. Actually, there's two events, but the first and main event was him discussing with me. He was a hunter, and him and another friend of ours would go out hunting in the Angelina National Forest in southeastern Texas, on the border of Louisiana, and it was the Sabine River area. And he told me about himself going out hunting, and he, this one night, decided to go out. His buddy, Richard, was going to meet him the next day, and he decided he would go out that night and camp and wait for his buddy the next day so they could hunt together. And they'd been there many times. And this was during the time when everybody had the giant Bigfoot four-wheeler trucks, that were listed. And in Texas, you could just go off-road and go through the forest, and nobody would bother you. You could drive your vehicle wherever you wanted. There were no true regulations on where you could take your vehicle at that time. And my husband and his friends would go off, a couple miles down into the woods with their four-wheelers off-road. And this one night, he was by himself, of course, and he camps very light. He basically is a blanket and a couple of things to eat, his firearm, and that's pretty much it. And so he got to his campsite, which he says is about a mile and a half to maybe 2 miles off road down in this forest. And created a fire, and which he likes to build the fire on the back end of his truck, and he would sleep under the tailgate of his truck. He'd fold down his tailgate, put down a sleeping bag, and sleep under that. In case of rain, he would have a little bit of shelter from the tailgate. Anyway, he was laying there, and what had basically happened was something started circling his campsite. And he said it was creating a lot of noise, to the point where at first he thought maybe it was a cow, but he realized there's no cows in this area because we're not a free-range state. It's not like the Pacific Northwest or anything west of New Mexico where the BLM allows free range. That's
right.
not what happens in Texas. And he said he could hear huge breaking and snapping of something, but it was actually circling his camp. And long story short, by the time it came around the second time to circle his camp, he knew this was something that he didn't understand. He could not, Texas doesn't have large predators. I mean, we've been known to have possibly bear in the northeast part of Texas. Cougar, is considered to possibly be here, but the state of Texas doesn't really recognize cougar in the area. And we just, and wolves, we've had red wolves, but that's also considered an extinct species in the United States, except for, I believe it's South Carolina, where they've actually put those animals in the area. And they're a very small group of numbered individuals. Other than that, we just really don't have large predators. But something was literally circling his camp and breaking very large trees. He felt that they were breaking off giant branches off of trees, and it was circling his campsite. And after it came around the second time, he basically said, to heck with this, threw his gun and his sleeping bag in the truck, ran over the campfire, went into the edge of town, and slept at the gas station in his truck.
Wow.
And my husband is extremely brave. He's the guy that will go through the woods in the middle of the night with no headlamp. He's not afraid of anything. I've known him all my life, and this story kept coming up throughout our marriage, quite frequently. I want to say probably every couple of months we would sit around and on Saturday nights me and him visit, and he would bring this story up, and I kept thinking, what the heck is that? I mean, what could that be? I know he's not a liar. I know he's not crazy. And then I don't remember. I think it was probably around 2010 to 2013. I'm not really sure. Something clicked in my head, and I said, "Are you talking about Bigfoot?" And he just looked at me and said, "I just didn't want you to think I was crazy."
Bless his heart.
And I knew right then. Right. I mean, we're talking 25 years, 30, almost about 25 years of him continually telling me this story over and over. And what he was trying to get me to do, I guess, was figure out what he was trying to talk about without him saying there was a Bigfoot in the area. And of course, this is Texas. In the 80s and 90s, or before that, we would have never thought about a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch in this region. We always considered it the Pacific Northwest. And I'd always